put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey, that's me, gang. Thank you. It's Wednesday, and it's great to see all of you. I appreciate you guys taking another Wednesday evening and spending it here with me on YouTube. And boy, we got a ton of people here already tonight. Ishmael, haven't seen you in a while, man. John Edward, Troy's here, Kyle's here, Robert's here from Texas, Jean Edward, Anand, James, John. There's a ton of people here, guys. Seriously, thank you again, as always, for spending a Wednesday evening with me to talk about photography. So, hey, really quick, just in case you're crazy enough to not be able to get enough of me, tonight, when I'm done with TogChat, I'm going to take a half-hour break to catch my breath. And I say a half hour because you know I'm supposed to finish at 7, and I usually don't finish till 7:30, right? So at 8 o'clock tonight, Anand is here from down under, man. He's on his way to work. There he goes, okay? So 8 o'clock tonight, Eastern Time, US, I am going to be appearing on another YouTube live stream called Mirrorless Minutes. I just put the link to it in the chat window. Here is a picture of their logo and their YouTube channel. So, you know, if you got nothing better to do, and for you guys like in Europe, and I think Michael's here from all the way from South Africa, come on, man. Who needs sleep, right? You can do that when you're dead. So when you're done with TogChat, go grab another cup of coffee, and you can check me out on Mirrorless Minutes tonight. And just in case you don't know what Mirrorless Minutes is all about mirrorless photography. And the two guys that run it, I'm going to let you meet them later, but Jamie and Mike, they are Olympus visionaries. They are mirrorless camera shooters. Mike does this really, really cool stuff with 360 cameras too, which you got to check out. But we're going to talk mirrorless cameras. So if you're a mirrorless user, and yes, we even welcome Sony people to the conversation. Sony, no baloney. It's okay, right? But even if you're not a mirrorless user, you should check it out. You might learn something, right? So, gang, here's the cool part. I have no other business for you. So let's dive in and do questions, right? Because that's what we're here for. So check in. I see a bunch of you guys already telling me you're here and where you're from. Susan's here from Melbourne too. I love it when I got people from all over the world. We got Denmark, South Africa here, France is here. Heck, even somebody from New Jersey's here. Like, wow, right? So check in. Tell me where you're from. Let's get some questions going. I got a bunch queued up here already. So for those of you that are maybe new to TogChat or don't know, the party starts around 5 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. because it takes me a while to get all this stuff set up on the screens here. So I'm usually in the chat room by 5 o'clock, and the conversation starts. Adam, yeah, hey, even Fuji, they're okay too. It's all good, right? So let me bring up some of the questions. So start loading some questions in, some topics in. Let's hit some of the ones that I already had in here. So I had 2 that were left over from last week, and they were good ones. These came in right at the end. So I want to try and hit these kind of really quick so that we don't forget them, all right? So the first one is, this was from Bilal. He wanted to know, what are the best dimensions for uploading a photo to Instagram, especially since people like pinch and zoom all the time? And Bilal, that's actually a great question. It's one that's worth talking about because people get a little confused with what you kind of can and can't get away with the social media stuff. And I've talked about this before on the TogChats that I did about marketing. I talk about it in the videos that I do on YouTube. But I wanted to give you guys just kind of a little refresher and, shall we say, a reminder. So I went to we'll go right to the source, right? I went to Instagram to get that answer. And the answer is, it's pretty simple, 1080, right? 1080 pixels. So you can go 1080 wide and you can go 1080 tall. That's your max. Now we know now that Instagram will show vertical images and it will also show narrow horizontal images. You don't have to create the faux blurry background or have color borders on the side. But there's a lot of research that's already shown the square pictures still get the best play. Now, there is some research that's arguing that some of the taller images work out well, but square, still number one. So 1080 by 1080. There is no value. In fact, it's probably a bad idea to up-res your pictures from that and let Instagram compress them, because that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to take your JPEG, right? So remember, a JPEG is a compressed file. They're going to take your JPEG and they're essentially going to recompress it and make it smaller, which means you are going to lose quality and you're losing control of that quality. So that's really, not a good thing in that sense. So 1080 by 1080, that's your answer. Anand, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Really, really appreciate it. So Anand has a question here with regards to EVF use questions. When and why do you use or skip the image review after the shot and turn off exposure preview? Awesome. Actually, it's a great question. And it's a question that I had to kind of acclimate myself to fairly quickly when I switched over to Olympus. So for those of you that are not mirrorless users, let's just give you a little bit of background of what the heck he's talking about, right? So EVF means electronic viewfinder. So that's what you get in a mirrorless camera. Since there's no mirror, you're not actually optically looking through the lens in real time. You are looking in real time at an image that's being rendered on your sensor through the lens, but you are looking at it on an electronic viewfinder. So the cool part about that is you have the ability, and I say you have the ability because you can also turn off. That's part of what Anand is asking here. You have the ability to actually see a finished picture, meaning to be able to see the exposure, to be able to see the depth of field without having to hit a depth of field preview button or any of that stuff that you have to do on DSLRs. So it's, Troy, thank you. I had pizza for dinner, as a matter of fact, so I'll put that towards my next pizza for sure. So that's what EVF is. It's basically electronic viewfinders. If you're a Canon or a Nikon user or any other brand that's not mirrorless, basically you are using OVF viewfinders, which is an optical viewfinder. So his question is, number one, when do you skip the image review? So Anand, what I have settled in on, and I leave it this way, I have not found a reason to turn it off or change it yet. So this is going to be a very personal decision, but I have my image preview set to show me in the viewfinder only, because now we've talked about this before with regards to some other Sony No Baloney YouTubers. I don't believe in shooting with the camera out here like this. Really bad idea. And there's a whole bunch of science behind it. The people that love doing it. They're not going to listen to Joe. They're not going to listen to the science. And let's be clear, they take really nice pictures. But the science says it's not the best way to do it. Done. So for me, I always have my eye to the viewfinder unless I'm shooting tethered and then I can watch the computer screen, right? So my approach, Anand, when I have my eye at the EVF, I have my camera set so that it's going to give me a 1 second preview for every frame. So it's literally, the image just flashes. It's a quick confirmation that I got it. And it doesn't matter if I'm in the studio or if I'm shooting out on location with a subject. I'm going to do a series of test shots. I'm going to get my exposure down, and then I'm going to start shooting. So I don't need to really analyze the images that much. I just want that quick visual confirmation that I haven't knocked the dial and switched my shutter speed or my aperture and suddenly I'm underexposing or overexposing. So I literally have it just 1 second preview, and so it's a flash. If I'm shooting in fairly rapid sequence, I'm getting a flash of my image. And then if I want to stop to make sure that the hair's still looking okay and details are where they should be, then I'll simply preview the image, by using the preview button. So that's my approach there. Some people may find that annoying. Again, I'm not saying that's for everyone. That's what's worked really well for me. In terms of the exposure preview, so that, folks, is basically the idea that you're seeing exactly what your finished image is going to look like. The only time I turn off exposure preview is in the studio. Because in the studio, when I'm using strobes, if I'm shooting at f8, the ambient light in the studio, when my camera is set at ISO 200 and at 2/50th of a second and f8, well, then the image is pitch black. So then I'm going to turn off the exposure preview and basically do live boost and, show it at the brightest available image based on the aperture of the lens and the camera. So that's what I'm doing there. And for me, that works out great. So I hope that helps. Okay. Red3 2030. Can you do photography with a low budget camera? Heck yeah, man. You can do photography with any camera. You can do photography with these. See, like, I'm a Tog. It says so right there on my phone. So I can do photography with that. Look, I love gear as much as anybody. I get gas, the gear kind, just like anybody else does, right? It's cool to have the toys. And certainly, doing this YouTube thing, that's been one of the greatest blessings is that, companies have even been willing to give me toys to play with. So let's be clear. I love toys, right? But in terms of, do you have to have toys to take great pictures? Do you have to have expensive gear? No. And, I will tell you, Red3, I haven't seen your name pop up before, so I'm guessing maybe you're new to my channel. If that's the case, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Make sure you go through my YouTube channel and make sure you check out my playlist. I have a playlist. It's all about DIY videos. So in fact, here, let me bring it up and show you, because if you've never seen these, as much as I like the toys, I am always doing videos to try and help you guys out with saving money. So if we scroll down on my channel, if you go to my channel, there's a whole playlist here, DIY photography equipment. And a lot of times it's actual gear that you can put together yourself. Sometimes it's DIY techniques that are going to save you a lot of money. And it's hard. It's hard to separate between, hey, I really want this piece of gear, as opposed to, do I really need this piece of gear? That's a challenge. But sometimes, and I'm guessing based on the way you asked the question, you probably don't have a ton of money to throw around. And so that was going to be the last part of my answer. Sometimes we don't have that option. We just don't have the money to throw at it. So you got to make do with what you have. And that brings me to something that I always talk about with great photography. Great photography, creating great images, is the process of problem solving. I grew up with the understanding that creativity was about being artsy. Like if you were really creative, you were really artsy. And I would argue and say, no, that is completely wrong. And I get it. I'm disagreeing with the dictionary. Oh my God, you can't do that, right? But I will disagree. Creativity is not about being artistic. Creativity is the act of solving problems. If you are artistic, you have cool ideas, right? Because that's the whole point. You come up with these really unique, really different ideas, but you can't do anything with those ideas unless you can solve the problem. So creativity is really about problem solving. It's that connecting of the dots and coming up with solutions. So let's see. Do I know what kind of camera he used here? What's this now? Oh, Troy's using the D3300. Sorry. Okay. I saw that there. So yeah, guys, when you have the money, it's great to buy expensive cameras and all kinds of gear, but you don't need that. So Jean Edward, when did that Olympus camera pop up? Yes. So what that's called, Jean Edward, you can Google it. The fact that you only just noticed the Olympus camera, that's called change blindness. It's one of the things that I talk about in my lecture on creativity, and also called the art of seeing. So Google change blindness. In fact, if you go to YouTube after my show and before Mirrorless Minutes, and you type in change blindness, you'll actually be able to watch some really entertaining videos that tell you what that is. So I'm done with the science now. Okay, that's it for science. All right. So let's see here. Scrolling back up, I know we had some more. Oh, we even got some people here from the UK tonight. Awesome. Let's see. Sean Edward, thank you for the kind words about Patreon. Great. Yeah, guys, it's cool. Every Friday night, very chilled, very laid back. We spend another hour, which in Joe time, 90 minutes. We use Zoom technology. So, patrons, they log in from their, their laptops with their webcam. So we all get to see each other. We all get to talk. Some weeks we're helping people solve problems with shoots they have coming up. Other times we're doing stuff with, Photoshop. Other times, one of, our members takes us for walks on the beach. That's kind of an inside joke. You have to be a patron to understand that, but cool. We really do. We go for walks on the beach in Barbados. It's awesome. Okay. So, some more questions here, guys. I had a bunch. So Jean Edward asked me, one of my slogans or phrases that I use is your best shoot is your next shoot. Actually, it's your best shot is your next shot, but you're right. That's it. Okay. He wanted to know, do I sometimes stop and look back at my previous work and what I'd done before? And if I do, is that beneficial? Is there any value to doing that? And if so, what are some of the things that I've learned from looking at my previous or earlier work? And and what would I advise, if any, to look for when reviewing one's early work? So, one of the things that I've learned by getting old, which means this sucks that I know this, but it's how life is, right? You really can gain a lot by looking backwards. Now, I don't mean reminiscing and, missing the good old days. I'm not one of those people. I hate that. The good old days were the good old days. I was there. It's like listening to classic rock. I respect classic rock, but I don't want to listen to it. I lived through it. I want something new and different. That'd be like watching the same movie 10 times over. There's no fun in that, right? So for me, it's about what's new, where can I go? So where the value of looking at my old work is, and I don't do this a lot, don't get me wrong, but every now and then, I'll come across an old picture, and I'll kind of like pause, and I'll look at the way I composed it. I'll look at maybe the way that I did lighting. Even when I look at my work from like the early 2000s to now, there's a very, very distinct difference for me in terms of the lighting style and the way I went about it. But when I'm in a studio, I still feel like the same guy. I still feel like I think the same way, but I clearly don't. What it does for me, Jean-Edouard, is it really just kind of helps me affirm that I'm doing things that I like, that I have evolved, that I am changing, that I'm not getting stagnant, because I don't want to be stagnant. I mean, I won't lie. I'm scared to death of getting old. I'm scared to death of being irrelevant, not just on this YouTube platform, but just, in general. I like contributing. I like being a part of what's happening. And I want my photography to be that way to some degree. So, I definitely am always looking for how I can move forward. But, even here in the United States, in the political climate that we're in, and I'm not going to turn this into a politics, conversation, but oftentimes some of the best ways to understand the things that are happening is actually to look at history and to look at the things that have happened before. So Jean-Edouard, I highly encourage you to do it when you have time. I have a feeling you are asking me to give you kind of maybe like a roadmap of look at this and analyze this and check this and see what you think about that. And honestly, it's going to be different for everyone. I would encourage you, when you look back at your old shoots, try and remember as much as you can about it. And I mean as much as possible. If you can remember your mindset. Were you feeling really overwhelmed? Was it a really early shoot and maybe it's the first time you did something and maybe you got lucky? Maybe you didn't even really know what you were doing, but it all came together and you wound up loving the picture. Was it your first time or one of your early times working with a model? Or was this maybe a particularly difficult model or subject to direct or get them to relax? When you look back through that stuff, that's where you're able to kind of make the comparisons of where am I now? How have I progressed? What have I learned? What would I do different? And the one thing I've also learned by looking back at some of my work from time to time is I'm reminded about things that I've forgotten. When you do this long enough, the human brain is not as safe. We're not like elephants. We don't store everything. I don't have a photographic memory. God, I wish I did. I forget lots of stuff. So looking back at times, I'm reminded of, gosh, I haven't done that in like forever. That would be so cool if I did it like in the way that I'm shooting something now. Or like a couple weeks ago. Actually, I just had this experience just the other day. You guys saw that live composite video that I did where I created the backgrounds using the Olympus camera in real time. And just the other day I was in the studio doing shot and it kind of hit me. It's like, wow, that picture that I took like 5 years ago, if I used that setup now and added the live composite style background, I could like take it to a whole new level, right? So yes, in that sense, I think it's definitely very worth your while to, go back and review. But ultimately, don't live in the past, right? When you live in the past, you become a dinosaur. We all know how that turned out. Don't be that. So it's always about it's moving, forward and going from there. Wow, Troy, I haven't heard anybody talk about logbooks in forever. I had a couple of those when I was a kid. I tried using them. I just didn't have the patience. But yeah, you're right. It was basically like keeping a photographic diary. You write down your shutter speed, your, not your ISO. You write down your shutter speed, your ASA, and your aperture and, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So Ishmael, thank you very much, man. I sincerely appreciate that. Really. I sincerely. Thank you. I appreciate the support. So, let's see here. Going back up. Ian Robinson, do I think cell phones are taking over? No, not at all, Ian. Here's the thing. I'll be honest. So I'm going to step on a couple toes here. I'm not trying to step on toes, but I know I'm going to hurt a few people. I think these are the greatest thing ever for photography because they make photography accessible to people. And what I've learned over time is, oh, wow, no, I'm sorry, I won't answer that. Just kidding. So what I've learned over time is that the people that are most threatened, now when I say people, the photographers, so air quotes, photographers that are most threatened by smartphones or iPhones are the ones that fall into one of two categories. Category one, they're lazy. They just don't want to have to work that hard to produce great work. They want the work to come to them, fall into their lap so that they don't have to put out a lot of effort. Or category two, they're the photographers that really suck in the first place. Meaning suddenly people are using these and they're taking pictures that are as good as what they're taking with their really expensive cameras. So, to me, it's kind of like my teaching that I do for free. If I help one person improve their photography, then I have contributed to the greater good of photography and the industry. That's a success. So the idea that these phones are readily available and people actually take more pictures now than they've ever taken in history. I think that's awesome. It's more accessible. Pictures are cool. Pictures are fun. Just because we spent lots of money on cameras doesn't mean we should be the only ones to be able to enjoy the process of taking pictures, right? So I think it's great. I truly think it's awesome that cell phones are, but they're not taking over. No, if you want to make money as a photographer, because I'm going to make a guess here that that's kind of where that question's coming from, Ian. If you're going to make money as a photographer, you want to make money, bottom line, it's no different today than it was 30 or 40 years ago. You got to work your butt off. Done. You work your butt off, you create a good product, you make money. It is actually kind of a simple process, but it's not an easy process, right? So let's see here. John Smith, you like watching good movies over and over. I just had this conversation earlier today with my intern. I'm not a fan of watching movies over and over, but I get it. I'm in the minority. People love to do that. Maybe sometime when you catch me in the right mood, I will tell you the 2 movies that I will gladly watch. If they're on TV and I'm flipping channels, I'll stop and I'll watch them anytime. But it's really embarrassing, so I'm not telling you right now. Mark LeBlanc, thank you so much for the super chat, man. Really, really appreciate it. So let's see. I saw another one here. Magnum reflector. Ludmilo, have I used a Magnum reflector? What are they used for? I don't even know what they are. Sorry. Is that a brand name or is that? I've never heard of a Magnum reflector. So in fact, here, let me really quick, because I don't like at least not being able to point you in the right direction. And I don't want to just say, hey, go to Google. Let me see what a Magnum reflector is. I'm guessing it's a brand name, but I've never heard of such a thing. Let's see. What do I got? I'm getting, whoa. Are you talking about a Profoto, like a silver dish reflector? Let me know if that's what you're talking about. So the answer is no, but I can try. If you have a specific question, I can at least try and help you out conceptually, because a reflector is a reflector. It's just there's different sizes and shapes. So so let me know exactly what you're trying to find out about that, Ludmilo, and if you are referring to one of the Profoto reflectors, and I'll gladly try and help you out then. Okay. Bruno, does the quality of light from different soft boxes change much, considering same sizes, different brands? So, step one, I have a series of videos that'll be coming out the end of June, beginning of July. They're going to come out over several weeks. They're all about modifiers. I am breaking down and doing comparisons of 48 different light modifiers, starting with speed light modifiers and then moving up into studio strobe type modifiers. That being said, the short answer to your question, Bruno, is yes. But the more appropriate answer, and the answer that's actually going to be of use to you, is to understand that first, you and I would need to define, what are we talking about quality of light? Are we talking about color temperature? Are we talking about the spread of light? Are we talking about how focused is the light? Okay. Because unfortunately, different people refer to quality of light in kind of any one of those 3 arenas. So it would help to define which of those you are thinking of first. In terms of the quality of light with regards to color temperature, in today's world with auto white balance and in today's world with the way that we can color correct in Photoshop, I don't worry too much about that aspect of color quality in terms of different light modifiers, because it's going to be like 2 clicks, fixed, done. Okay. With regards to the shape and the spread, certainly, yes, that's basically how you pick the modifier that you're going to use. Is how is it going to control the light in relationship to what kind of light you want. So I think you'll see when this series comes out, it's going to be very, very helpful. But like I've been warning people, and I'm going to keep warning people, this series is also going to confuse the heck out of a lot of people in the sense that I'm going to give you a lot of options. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can take one of them and make it look like 6 other. Just like the video that I did, guys, where I took the $6 shoot-through umbrella and I created light that looks exactly like it came out of a beauty dish. So as long as you understand how modifiers work, as long as you understand the inverse square law, there's those 3 evil words from the world of physics. As long as you understand that stuff, you can actually get by with very inexpensive modifiers to do really, really expensive looking light. That's the key. So the key is not to just go buy a ton of these modifiers. The key is to understand, how they really use, or how they really work and what they do for you, and then you go from there. So Michael's got a question here from South Africa. What are the most effective ways to convert or encourage Facebook followers to become paying customers? He's a portrait photographer. So, Michael, that's actually a question that I can't deal with in a few minutes, but I want to give you at least something to think about. So the first thing I'm going to recommend that you do, Michael, is when we get done tonight, and when you have a few minutes, you want to go and visit my YouTube channel, okay? And I'm going to bring it up here. When you get to the front page of the YouTube channel, on the top of the page, there's that little magnifying glass. Click that magnifying glass and then type in social media. That's all you got to do. 2 words. And hit enter, okay? And then what's going to come up is a series of videos that I did, and there's part 1, part 2. God knows why they come up in reverse order, but there you go. So start with part 1. That's actually the important one. Part 2 is good, but part 1 is more important. Part 1 doesn't actually talk about Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. Part 1 actually talks about what you're asking. How do you get people to respond the way you want them to respond? Part 2 gets into the nitty-gritty of the different, social media websites, etc. But one of the first things that I'll point out to you, and I'm mincing words, Michael, so I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I want to make sure that I get you thinking the right way. Stop thinking of these people as followers. In fact, stop thinking of social media as social media, as in a website, as in an annoyance, as in something that I have to do. Okay? Because followers generally don't pay you money. Clients pay you money. Now, I understand your question was, well, how do I convert my followers into clients? If that's the case, you've been doing it wrong all along, because you don't want followers. As a photographer that shoots portraits, who wants people to pay you for portraits, then you don't want followers. You want potential clients. From the beginning, there's no value to converting because you don't want to have to convert. You want to have potential clients. So if you watch that first video, I promise you, it's going to change. It's going to change your thought process a little bit in terms of how you approach the social media, how you think about using it. And I promise you, it will make a big difference for you. Start there. And if you're finding that that's not getting you where you need to get to, then by all means come back and ask me some follow-up questions. But I think you'll find that will help a lot. Okay. All right. So let's see. Jean Edward. Jean Edward, that's not fair. So, all right. Jean Edward has given me a super chat to answer the question. So, I should have been smart, and I should have put a much higher price on this, because I'm not kidding. It's embarrassing. But so in my defense, keep in mind, guys, I'm 58 years old, right? So I'm not a kid. Okay. But but never in a million years. I should make you guys guess, but I'm not going to take up the whole talk chat with guessing about movies. So the 2 movies that I will stop and watch anytime, and I realized today when I was discussing this with my intern that maybe there's a third. So, because I always say it's 2, but there is maybe a third. So they're both, actually all 3 of them are from the 1980s. Sad, I know. So you ready, guys? You're going to have a good laugh. The first one, Flashdance. Love that movie. The second one, I can hear the laughs coming through YouTube right now, and then the eye rolls and the palm plants. I can hear it. The second one, Dirty Dancing. Swear to God. And the third one, since you're all having a good laugh at me now, the third one, if I'm clicking the channels and it's there, I'll stop. And I thought of this today only because he's making a new one. Tom Cruise, Top Gun. So there you go, John Edward. Thank you. I think. Okay. So, where are we at here? Mike Osinski, am I going to be using the 8200 in the new modifier videos? I will be comparing speed lights, pocket flashes, and studio strobes, but not for every modifier, Mike. Here's the one thing that I can promise Troy. It's a Wonderful Life. Now that's going back way before me, Troy. I don't do black and white, man. Only in still photography. So, Mike, I can promise you this. 90 Mark, don't say you're right, they are terrible movies, but there's just something about them. That's why I was embarrassed to say it. So, Mike, pretty much in my videos, I'll use as the example. The shots that you see me do in my videos, you could do them with a little Yangwano speed light. You could do them with a Pro Photo strobe. You could do them with pretty much anything. Literally. So now, does that mean that there are some things you can do with a bare bulb that you can't do with a Fresnel lens and that kind of stuff? Yes, there are. But I hope you'll understand in advance, with 48 modifiers, I'm not going to be able to like take every modifier and compare it with 3 different types of light. Because there's basically 3 different styles of lighting that's out there today. You know, if we're talking strobes, you've got the speed lights, you've got the pocket flashes, because that's the new entry, the Godox 8200, which is the pocket flash. And then you've got Roger. Okay, you guys just have fun. Go for it. Just go for it. Okay. The things that I do on YouTube. Okay. So, and then you've got the studio strobes, which essentially are bare bulb type strobes. So, yeah, I will be showing some comparisons, but Mike, the context that I'm going to show those comparisons is basically to show that it doesn't matter, to try and reassure people. It doesn't matter if you're using a speed light or using a studio strobe. The modifier is still going to essentially work the same way. So, okay. All right, so I've completely lost my thread with questions now. It's all about movies and books. All right, guys. So Mark LeBlanc, I saw had a question. Let me get up to the first one. I saw it's in 2 parts, Mark. You said, I know that you like lenses native to your camera body. Yes, I do. But what do you think about FX lenses on a DX body? In other words, you're a Nikon D500 action shooter and you're moving towards portrait photography. And then the follow-up question he had was, or follow-up to that question was, in his research, he hasn't heard a lot of great things about DX lenses, except for a few. Should he just go down the road of getting FX lenses? I don't know if I will switch to a full-frame body or not. Okay, so your last sentence there, Michael, Mark, actually complicates the answer a little bit, but, you know, in a good way, okay? So my response would have been, if it was not for your sentence or statement about don't know if you're going to switch to full frame, my response would have been, well, if you think maybe down the road you're going to switch to full frame, certainly buy the full frame lenses now. That way you're not going to have to upgrade your glass later, right? If you really don't see that in your future, then I would suggest that you're not really going to be hurting yourself with DX lenses. However, if you're in the Nikon ecosystem, indeed, some of the Nikkor DX lenses are indeed cheap junk. They just are. And I'm not saying that because I left Nikon, yada, yada. We're not brand bashing, gang. I'm just saying they don't test out very well. They don't have a great reputation. Okay. So I didn't say those things. I'm just reporting that. So that being said, but not all of them, right? But not all of them. So I think what you got to do there, Mark, is you just have to do a little bit more research and be a little bit more careful. Certainly the price tag on those DX lenses is often very enticing because it's a lot lower than the full frame lenses. But also frequently with those DX lenses from Nikkor at least, you're not able to get the same kind of speed that you can get with the full frame lenses. So I think part of it is you've got to look at your needs in terms of what do you want your maximum apertures to be, what do you want to be working at, what kind of speed are you after, and then secondly, then you've got to literally just do the research on, how is this lens testing out? But if we just do it by the category, like full frame versus DX, is it better to have one or the other? No, that's crap. Are there going to be more full frame lenses that probably test better? And are there going to be more full frame lenses that are faster than DX lenses? Sure, absolutely. So it's really going to kind of depend on, brand of lens, what focal length you're looking at, what Nikon has to offer in that category. So I wish I could be a little bit more specific and, and tell you like this one. But I think, what I do think is actually very smart that you're being honest with yourself about where you see yourself going, because that is the key. Before you start expanding your system out, you really do have to try and imagine down the road a little bit, which is not always easy to do. And you're not always going to get it right, but you got to take that best guess because that's going to help you save a lot of money along the way. So I think it's very smart that you're kind of looking at it that way. But just do a little bit more research. That's all. Okay. All right. So, wow, I got some old people in here, man. We're talking about John Wayne and John Ford Westerns. Whew. Sorry, Steve. So, let's see here. Where are we at? Scrolling back up well, actually, I had a couple other questions saved from early on. So let me get a couple of these guys. So, Bob had a question. What is the difference between depth of field and bokeh? And then he goes on to say, and more importantly, how do you pronounce bokeh? Some people say bokeh, some say bouquet, some people say bouquet. I always say bokeh. Somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong. Whatever. It's bokeh. But here's the thing. Depth of field is not bokeh, and bokeh is not depth of field. Bokeh is something that you get as a result of shooting at very shallow depth of field. But understand that bokeh really has nothing to do with depth of field. So, Bob, the answer is a lot longer than I can get into in a TogChat and actually help you. Do your research, Google, YouTube, okay? Depth of field. Learn about depth of field first. And please understand a couple things. It's like my egg video. Watching a video or reading an article about depth of field means that you still know nothing about depth of field. Understanding the terms, being able to answer the question, what three things control depth of field, does not mean that you get it. You got to go out and do it. So indeed, it means that you'll know more than those people that think that depth of field is a blurry background. In fact, I saw a post on my Facebook wall today where somebody posted two pictures, one where they focus on the foreground, one where they focus on the background, and literally the caption on the picture was, depth of field, which one do you like better? I was like, okay, it had nothing to do with depth of field. It was a matter of selective focus, one on the foreground, one in the background, but the opposite was blurry. So this person thought that that's depth of field. No, that's not depth of field, okay? So the first thing is, you got to learn what depth of field is. But depth of field is not bokeh. Bokeh is a result of shooting wide open and seeing highlights in the background. That's the result, okay? So, let's see here. Kelly Bentz, who is the most famous person you ever had the opportunity to photograph? Yeah, Troy got it right. It's probably Princess Diana. I mean, I photographed a couple presidents. I photographed Jimmy Carter, photographed Gerald Ford. In the movie world, God, bunches of people, people like Sylvester Stallone got to photograph. Actually, like, some historical stuff. Jesse Jackson, Timothy Leary, he was a fun one to photograph. I got to photograph him like one-on-one in an interview session. Obviously long before he passed away. He was a lot of fun. But yeah, I will say that for the most part, and I don't mean this in any kind of snipey way, the famous people, I always thought when I was younger, it was really cool to have access to these famous people and like, oh my God, like I have to do more of this. I really want to do, and I started to quickly realize like I actually didn't like photographing the famous people. And the reason was, so I'm going to say it kind of categorically first. So each one of these details doesn't necessarily apply to each of them. Please, let's be clear. And I'm also talking about working one-on-one. I did not get to photograph Diana one-on-one. Okay. I got to photograph her at an event and I stood face to face with her for a few moments, but I did not like have a one-on-one photo session. Let's be clear. But what I started to learn about photographing famous people was it's always a letdown. And that's because, you know, especially for even presidents for that matter, like when we see them on camera, when we see them on television, when we see them, you know, in a movie, whatever, that's a character, that's a persona. The real version is not exactly the same. It doesn't look exactly the same. It doesn't act exactly the same. Sylvester Stallone. I photographed Sylvester Stallone while he was filming Rocky 2. So he was like the biggest thing around. He had won the Academy Award for Rocky 1. He was the hottest thing ever. And the guy walked into the room and he's an inch shorter than I am. And I was like, oh my God, the guy's like tiny. But on screen, he's like this big boxing dude, right? It's like, whoa. So for me, I ultimately learned over time, it's always cool to meet famous people. Drives my wife nuts because we'll go to New York or we'll go to Las Vegas and I'm picking famous people out like that. Because it's just, when I walk someplace, I look at faces. So I'll spot people in a crowd. But ultimately with me, for people, the shoots that I had the most fun with and the shoots that were the most rewarding were people that weren't famous at all, but people that had interesting stories, people that were actually interesting, people that lived lives and lived experiences that were just completely different and foreign to mine. You know, you guys have heard me talk about having access to people, and that's why I like photography so much, and that's what photography was to me. It was that access. That's the key. It's you know, having that access to people and experiences and things like that. And then see, like Kelly here, you know, talked about, you know, the celebs or divas. In their defense, and so seriously, like I'm actually about to go there. I'm going to defend celebrities for being divas. Ready? But it's legit. You know, and I'm not saying that some of the horrible behavior we hear about is acceptable. Please, okay, cut me some slack here. But for somebody to become a celebrity and somebody to become famous, they've worked very, very hard at creating that image. And they've got a lot of money and an income riding on that image. So they protect that image and they work very hard to protect it. So as photographers, when you're working one-on-one with celebrities, yes, they're going to be a pain in the ass because they want to control their image. And that's why people like Annie Leibovitz became so famous, not just because her photographs were great, but because she was able to take these people who are control freaks out of necessity. She was able to take these people and get them to do things that were so far out of their comfort zone and so just outrageous and different that it was a complete departure from the way we as the general public were used to seeing them. And for that celebrity, the things that she often got them to do, if you think about it, it was a huge risk. It was a tremendous risk for their career. And of course, she developed this, you know, ability to not only get the people to do it, but to be successful with her idea for them, meaning the attention that they got for what they did, like posing naked in a bathtub full of milk. The attention that they got was positive attention. It helped their career. Okay. So, and by the way, for all of you that are thinking about, you know, shooting a model naked in a bathtub full of milk, that was done like 4 decades ago for the first time. So please, it's been done. Come up with something more unique. Just saying. Okay. All right. Pualo, Nikon D850, what 85 millimeter, Nikon 85 1.8, Tamron 85 millimeter 1.8, or the Sigma 85 f 1.4 Art. Pualo, if you're using it for portraits, I would say none of the above. Sorry, I really wouldn't. I would suggest the Tokina 100 millimeter f2.8 macro lens. Just because I'm an Olympus guy doesn't mean that's changed my opinion on that lens. That lens is still amazing. Now, if you're not using that 85 millimeter for portraits, then that's a different discussion. I would tell you go with the Nikkor, period. The Nikkor is a great lens. I don't care what they say about the 1.4 Sigma. I'm sorry. I'm just not a fan of Sigma lenses. Tamron lenses, okay. I get it. Some of them bench test really well. That's fine. But no, if I had to have an 85, if that was my only option, then I'd go with a Nikkor. But if you're getting it for portraits, I would strongly encourage you to look at the Tokina. And if you've got the Sigma, then unless it's a soft lens and it's not giving you sharp images, you don't really need an 85. Unless you have an overwhelming situation, maybe like you're always shooting in a tighter space and the 100's a little bit too long, whatever. But yeah, so that's not doing a whole lot for me. So Steven Squire, speaking of bokeh, I saw someone on Facebook shooting portraits with a 500mm f4 and raving about the bokeh. Why? So Steven, one of my patrons does that. I'll call him out, Trevor, but he does it for fun, and it's really cool. It's literally like this personal challenge thing he does. He'll go out and he'll shoot portraits with a 500mm lens, just to be different. So, but you're right. There are people that are out there. It's like, how long a lens can we get? They're shooting with 500mm. They're shooting with 300mm. And here's the thing. Like, on one hand, it's a very unique perspective. It's a very different perspective. You don't see a lot of, portraits done that way. But essentially what they're doing is they're creating very shallow depth of field, which you can do with a shorter lens. If you understand how depth of field works, you can create the same kind of depth of field with a different lens and different aperture combination, right? And not to mention, using a 500mm or a 300mm or a 200mm lens to shoot a portrait, it's like you need a pair of walkie-talkies or earpieces to be able to communicate with your subject. So yeah, it makes no sense. It really doesn't. I mean, I see it as a gimmicky thing, but I don't see it as a practical thing. That's Roderick. Yeah, why go to a location when you just shoot from your window? I mean, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I don't see the practicality of that myself. But hey, for some people, it works. Okay. All right. So more questions. Let's see here. I'm going to try this name and I'm probably going to get it wrong. So I'll apologize in advance. Jignesh, his question is how to shoot LED signboards in daytime and nighttime. Kindly give me the answer for the same because I have a shoot for a client on Thursday. That was posted today, so that means tomorrow. So, I'm sorry. I'm going to wind up sounding like a jerk here. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm going to be completely honest. So, the fact that you're referring to this as a client job, I'm going to make an assumption, which is a fair assumption. Folks, if you disagree with this assumption, feel free to call me out for it. But I'm going to make an assumption that means you're getting paid. Because usually when we talk about a client, that means there's money involved and we're getting paid. Okay. So that means that essentially, if I can translate here, you've accepted a job from a client. And 24 hours prior to shooting that job, where you are going to take money from that person or company, you are on YouTube asking a guy who has almost 300 videos about shooting portraits. You are asking that guy with 300 videos about shooting portraits 24 hours before you're going to take money from a client how to photograph LED signboards. Really? Like, seriously? I can't help you. And in principle, I'm sorry, but I won't help you. And the reason why I won't help you is because, number one, you've asked me a very lazy question. So I want to be clear about why I'm not helping you. You've asked me an extremely lazy question. So, once again, how do you shoot LED signboards in daytime and nighttime? Well, what do you mean, how do you shoot them? What are you doing? What are the pictures for? What are the conditions? In daytime or nighttime, what are the conditions? Is there direct sunlight? Are they in shade? Are you doing it in a studio, for all I know? Like, how am I supposed to answer that? How can I possibly give you a productive answer in a Q&A session with a question like that? So I hope I am terribly wrong about my assumption that you are taking money for this gig. Because if you are taking money for this gig, you deserve to fail. I don't wish anybody harm with what they do with the camera, but that kind of behavior is the kind of behavior that gives the photography world and professional photographers a bad name. Now, in this gentleman's defense, at least I believe it's gentleman, before you all start dumping on him, so please, let's keep this civil. I'll be the one to call it out. There have been numerous times in my career, numerous times, where somebody said, hey, I need a photographer, can you do this? And I said, yep, absolutely, and had absolutely no idea how to do it. I've done that a bunch of times. That's part of how I forced myself to learn. However, I didn't wait until the day before the job to get on the internet and ask somebody a question. Instead, what I did is I went and I practiced it. I tried it. I figured it out so that I was prepared. I didn't wait for the day before. And just so we're clear, if that client called you this morning and said, hey, can you do the job tomorrow? And you don't know how, your answer should have been, you know what? I'm sure I can do it, but I can't do it tomorrow. I could do it 2 or 3 days down the road so that you had time. So I'm sorry. I don't like to really kind of bully people in that way because I just bullied this person. But I hope you understand, look, it's just the right thing to do. You don't take a job and then go to the internet 24 hours beforehand to try and figure out how to do it. That's not appropriate. Okay? So next up, let's see here. I got that one. Germano had a question. What flash power do I recommend for a tight studio? He's doing 3x3 meters. So that's it's like about 10x10 or so. Okay. Do you recommend strobe or continuous light? And finally, how do you make speed lights soft enough when they're close to the subject? All right. So let's do the first one. In terms of what flash power, Germano, that's not a question that I can give you a productive answer to. The reason being, I don't know what flashes you have, right? So depending on how powerful your flashes are, that's going to determine, how much power you have to work with in the first place. So for me to say, set it at half power or set it at a quarter power, that's actually not going to help you because my flashes could be dramatically different than yours. Plus, I don't know what apertures you like to shoot at. You guys hear me talk all the time that, I prefer to shoot at like f8 when I'm in the studio, all that kind of stuff. So that's really going to depend on your strobe. Now, going to your second question, do I recommend strobe or continuous light? That is strictly a matter of personal preference. If you are just starting out and you're going to go purchase your gear, like you don't have your lighting gear, I would ask you one question. Are you only going to, one question, I was immediately going to say two things, right? So let's do two questions. One, are you only going to use the lights in a studio setting in this small room? Two, are you going to be photographing any motion? In other words, are you going to have people jumping or flipping their hair or whatever, okay? If motion's involved, I would not do continuous lights yet. Continuous lights are getting brighter. They're getting much more versatile, but they're not quite there yet for action and stopping action. So that would be my answer on that one. But if that's not a factor, then yeah. Oh, Adam, thank you so much for the super chat, man. I didn't see that. I apologize. Thank you. I really, really appreciate the support, man. Adam, I hope I'm going to see you during Mirrorless Minutes tonight, okay? And then Germano, the third piece to your question, how do you make speed lights soft enough when they're close to the subject? So that makes me to believe that you already have some speed lights and you're trying to work in this 10x10 room and you're having a hard time, getting the light modified. So one of the first questions I would actually ask you, Germano, has nothing to do with the equipment, but it has to do with the room. And if I'm not sure if you're here because this question came in early, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of think it out. So yeah, Roderick, but even power in terms of watt seconds, that's not a question I can answer because it depends on what he has and what his needs are. So, even if I don't know what watt seconds he has, so I can't tell you what power to set it at. And even if I did know what watt seconds, I still can't tell you what power to set it at because it all depends on what aperture you want to set, want to shoot at, and it depends on how close the light is to the subject. There's like a bazillion variables, right? So back to that, how do you make the speed light soft when they're close to the subject? The question I have actually has to do with your 3 meter by 3 meter space. Are the walls white? If the walls are white, turn the speed light around and aim it in the opposite direction and use the room as a modifier. Go back and watch. In fact, here, let me switch back over. On my channel, because I talk about this, on my channel, if you watch the video, let me go back to the homepage. And of course, it's going to be slow now. If you watch the video that is down here, I hope, is it there? There it is. DIY Home Photo Studio. In fact, here, I'll give you the link. Watch this video. I actually talk in this video about how I use the walls as modifiers, okay? So check that out and start with that idea. And then, of course, you could use umbrellas, larger softboxes, etc. The big key that you're dealing with there, Germano, is try to get the light as far away as your subject as possible. The reason why you're having a hard time getting the light soft in a small space is because you're putting the light really close to the subject. We wrongly learn, and I say we because I learned this too, we wrongly learn the blanket rule: the bigger the modifier, the softer the light. That is not incorrect, but it's also not a blanket rule, because you can have the biggest modifier in the world, but the closer you get to your subject, there is a point of no return where that really, really big modifier is going to start to create really, really harsh shadows. So you can't just like take that one little guideline and like use it as the law, because no, the only law that counts is the law of physics, period. Okay. So, pick tie. Yes, you can bounce it off a reflector. Absolutely, man. You can bounce it off a lot of things. And in a small space, bounce flash is going to work very differently than it does in a big space. So you can actually use it, like you can turn your walls into a softbox, which is great. I do that in my studio all the time. Okay. All right. Let's see. Ajax, flying to Colorado for vacation, shooting some portraits while there. I can pack stands and softboxes, but curious about your MagMod bounce trick. Maybe I can use that and pack lighter. Which MagMod bounce trick? Are you talking about the idea of where I shot through the mag bounce and used it as a beauty dish type light? Is that what you're referring to? If let me know, Ajax. If that's the case, that's in. Gosh, let me find the video for you here. Here, let me switch over. Oh, there it is. This video right here. I'll get you this link. It was this video where I did that little trick with the mag mounts. Yeah, and it works out like really, really well. Another trick, if you have the mag bounce and you don't want to have to take big modifiers, but you either need a collapsible reflector, or when you get to Colorado, stop at a dollar store and get a piece of foam core. And I can't take credit for this trick. I have to give credit where credit is due. When I was at WPPI, speaking for Olympus, one of the other speakers, well, couples, was Sean and Danielle King from North Carolina. They're wedding photographers, really, really awesome. They did a really, really cool trick with the mag bounce. And basically what they did is on a light stand, they mounted a white reflector, and they mounted the speed light on the top of the stand, aimed straight down, and then put the mag bounce facing into the reflector. So what happens is you get a little bit of light coming through the mag bounce, but then most of the light is shot onto the reflector, which then gives you a very broad, very soft light. Works really, really well. And Ajax, if you're not sure what I'm talking about there, make sure you tune in for Zoom chat on Friday night for Patreon, and I'll set it up and I'll show you if you're not already in Colorado on vacation. Okay. All right. Where are we at? Ooh, it's only just 7 o'clock. Okay. So let's see here. Means I have plenty of time before I hit my hour. Right. Mark LeBlanc, one more question. You'll be done for the day. Okay. Have I used the Nick collection? Love the Nick collection. Have not used the DxO version because it's not out yet. So, but I hear, and I saw something go by today, so I have a feeling this is what you're talking about. DxO now has an upgrade for it, and hopefully it makes a better plugin for Photoshop. Just wondering if you've used, did I see you had more? Use it and have an opinion. More than anything out of the DxO, or excuse me, out of the Nick collection, I use Silver Effects for black and white. I love Silver Effects. I don't use the presets. I have created some of my own presets, but I absolutely love Silver Effects. The other plugins, I just don't have a lot of need for them, so it's not that they're bad. I don't use them that much. Jean Edward, it's out today. Yeah, I thought I saw something fly by that it came out today, so that means no, I haven't tried it. DxO is a good company, so I can only speak with what I know so far. I anticipate that they will do good things with it. They are also what I like about DxO having it. They are a small enough company that they can't afford to screw it up. Right? I mean, they just can't. They are a company that from the beginning has been trying to do really good stuff. I haven't been a fan of all their products, but this is a product that's kind of, already in play. It's already got a following. So I don't think you're going to see them turn around and change it too much. Certainly, I would expect, and we should all expect, that they're going to try and integrate it into their existing products, which down the road, could in theory mean that they're going to force us to use their products. I hope not, but it could. But I have no reason to expect that it's going to be a bad thing. You guys can tell me, since you read it. I have not had a chance to read the releases today yet, but I'm assuming there's a price tag attached to it. Let me know. So, Roderick, you got the Speedome. Good. Glad to hear it. So let's see. How often how often do I shoot tethered, and is it easier or more efficient in a studio setting? Most of the time I shoot tethered. Natasha, hi, how you doing? Most of the time I shoot tethered. Is it easier or more efficient? Neither. But it's better and higher quality, and it forces better habits and more attention to detail. But I would not call it easier or efficient, because efficient, you're setting up more gear, et cetera, et cetera. But I highly recommend it if you can. I've explained many, many times, I find two benefits from shooting tethered. One, I'm able to see a big image, so I can see the little details better, which allows me more control, et cetera. Two, I'm a little type A. I'm sure you guys haven't noticed that, at all. But that being said, I tend to work too fast. I started as a newspaper photographer, so that kind of fit me really well. I'm one of those people that I can find calm in the middle of chaos. So I tend to be a little hyper, shocker, right? So that being said, shooting tethered, it forces me to slow down, and it forces me to pay attention to things. So there's definite value to that. But in terms of, is it faster or easier? Yeah, no, neither one of those. It's better in that sense. So I'm hearing, what is it, $50 or $59? Change the engine. Yeah, and changing the engine is not necessarily bad. Again, the integration part, to me, that's common sense. Why would they buy it if they're not going to integrate it? So yeah, I think the big test for me, the kind of the litmus test will be, is it going to reach a point where the only way I can use silver effects is by using all of the DxO products? If I've got to open up another piece of software to get to silver effects, then no, I will stop using it and I will go another route. My hope is I'll still be able to get it as a standalone or as a plugin for Photoshop. And I would gladly pay for that. I'd pay $50 just for silver effects. Again, guys, let's face it. It's always nice when we get stuff cheaper for free. But to me, from a value standpoint, silver effects is absolutely worth $50. So at least for my needs. So I would pay for that, but I would want it to operate in Photoshop like it does now, not having to go through another piece of software. That would be a deal breaker for me. So fingers crossed that's not going to happen. Okay. Let's see here. Adam, this was a really good question. And I realized how a lot of people could kind of struggle with this. So I wanted to hit this one. It's a marketing question. Okay. So for those of you that don't care about the marketing, quick, go to the bathroom, get a soda, come back. If you don't have anyone to shoot for a few weeks, what would you post on your Facebook page to keep the engagement? Meaning, engagement, social media engagement. Okay. He doesn't want to post pictures of his flowers or abstracts because that's not his branding for his business. He's got quite a few pictures of his wife and his daughter, but he doesn't want to post any more of them because then it looks like they're the only people that he shoots. So when I first read that question, honestly, I kind of did I don't understand what the problem is. But then, I realized, yeah, part of what you read all the time when you, read about social media is being consistent and having a steady flow of posts. And, some people tell you should post at least 2 times a week. Some people 3 times a week if you're really aggressive, every day. Others, once a week, once every 2 weeks. So the realistic answer is, Adam, and I didn't go look at your social media, so I'm not going to call you out for any bad habits, okay? So don't worry. But I think the way you have to approach it is post when you have something of value to post, okay? And here's why I make that analogy. So forget the once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week rule, all that kind of stuff. I would say try reasonably to hit a minimum of once a week. But don't stress about that. It's more important that your posts have value. So what's value? So let's forget the internet for a minute, can we? Even though we're on the internet, let's forget it. If you're in a social setting, okay, and let's say you're at a cocktail party for your work, and let's say you walk up to a group of people and they are having a conversation about the weather, okay? You are not going to walk into the middle of that conversation and shout out, purple. Why would you do that? That has no bearing on the conversation. There's no value. You're either going to walk into that conversation, you're going to listen, or you're going to walk into that conversation and you are going to offer some little anecdote about the weather. It's like, yeah, I rode my bike to work today and I was just so surprised at how warm and how nice it was outside. That's what we do, right? We try to add value to a conversation. So I think what's more important for you on social media with your posts is to add value. Why is that important? Because just like in the conversation, if you walked into the middle of that talk about the weather and said purple, who cares? Why shouldn't anybody care about the color purple? So the whole idea is with social media, it's to add value because otherwise, who cares? So do make sure that even if you're just posting every 2 weeks, which we've established, that's not ideal, but that would be okay. It really would. But don't just post a picture. That's like walking up to somebody at that, cocktail party and just going, hey, look. Like, who does that? Well, actually, some people do that. It's kind of sad, isn't it? But still, we think of that as rude, right? Okay? It's more a matter of why am I supposed to look? Why should I care about what you're showing me on your phone? So when you post a picture, what you want to do is you want to talk about that picture. And I don't mean, I like the job that I did because the colors were really cool and the lighting was tough, but I got it right. No. Let's say it's an engagement portrait. You want to talk about the fact that you were honored, that you had the opportunity to spend a day or an afternoon or an evening with this couple as they're getting ready to spend the rest of their lives together, and how you guys had so much fun going out to that park and having them run through the field carefree and jumping, whatever it is they're doing in the picture. But talk about the experience that you had with them. And the benefit to that is, number one, you're adding some value. And some people are like, well, how does that add value? Oh, you're missing the boat if you don't understand how that adds value. The value that it adds is that those people that you want to contact you, the people that aren't your customers yet, the people that you consider your potential customers, but they haven't reached out to you yet, by telling that little story, one, you're showing them that you're sensitive. You got a soft side. You care about people. You're also letting them know that you'll be fun to work with. Because you're not just some jerk with a camera that's like, yo, about the picture. Like, you enjoy your clients. You enjoy spending time with them. Because believe me, even with the bride, if you do weddings, don't think that the bride is hiring you because of your photography. You're an idiot if that's what you think. That's not why they're hiring you. It's a given. You better take good pictures. Otherwise, they wouldn't have contacted you in the first place. So the good picture part, that's a given. That's the obvious. They're hiring you because they like your personality. They're hiring you because they think it would be great to have you spend the most important day of their life with them. That's why they're hiring you. So you provide value by telling stories, by furthering the conversation. Because the way you need to look at it, somebody earlier asked a question about converting followers, and I told him to go do some research, but I'll throw a little bit more into his answer here because it kind of fits this, Adam. Don't look at your social media as how do I convert followers. You don't want followers. What you have to look at is anybody that ever comes to your page, anybody that ever sees one of your pictures. They are one of your potential customers. They just don't know it yet. That's the key. There's a car dealership that is near me somewhere here in Pennsylvania. I honestly, I remember the guy's message because I laugh at it every time. Laugh at it only in the sense that it's a great message that he has. In fact, actually, I think they might be in New Jersey, but it's on the Philadelphia television channels. And I see it almost every morning when I'm watching the news while I'm getting my day started. And the guy sits there and he's real happy and he's really jovial. And he goes on and he's like, I've always been your car dealer. You just don't know it yet. And it's actually really, it's effective because it's very jovial. It's very personable. And it's like, look, I'm here. And of course, before that, he talks about all the things he's going to do to help you and how he can find, any kind of car you need and all this stuff. And so the summary of all these benefits that he's telling you about is, I've always been your car dealer. You just didn't know it. Well, it's actually a great analogy from a marketing standpoint. So, if you're a portrait photographer, if you're a wedding photographer, you've always been their portrait photographer. They just weren't aware of it. And you're not going to convince them by slamming picture after picture after picture after picture. That's not what's impressing people. Okay? And in fact, I'm actually a good example of that, guys. If you pay attention to the pictures I post, I don't post on average more than one photo a week, if that. Frequently, I'll go 2, even 3 weeks without posting a new photo. But everything in between is either, announcements of what I'm doing, and then I'm trying to provide value. Because my customers are you guys. My customers are the people that are going to follow me and watch my videos or come to my workshops or my talks. So that's where I'm trying to provide the value. So in my case, I've always been your teacher. You just didn't know it. There you go. So that's how I would encourage you to approach it. Understand that social media. So you guys know that I do a talk on social media for photographers that I do at a lot of different events. I open the talk up with a quote. My quote: social media is not the use of technology. Excuse me. Yeah. Let's try that again. Social media is not an invention of technology. Social media is the use of technology to be social. So you have to stop thinking about social media in terms of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You have to stop thinking about social media in terms of how often do I post? How many likes did I get? How many followers do I have? You're killing yourself if you're doing that. You're simply killing yourself. Okay? What you have to do is you have to go back and you have to be social. Because the irony of it is, marketing today for photographers is not a whole lot different. Successful photographers are making the big bank. It's not a whole lot different today than it was 30 or 40 years ago. The only difference is now you can make word of mouth happen in seconds by the thousands, whereas 30, 40 years ago, word of mouth could take a year or more to come full circle and provide you a new client. But overall, the marketing processes and the messaging were still the same. There's very, very little difference. Okay, so it's again, guys, it's all kind of how you choose to approach it. And I'm not trying to do that in one of those like, ooh, think pretty about it kind of things. No, it's just like really practical. Like that's the key. It's kind of a practical approach. So okay. All right, let's see here. Wow, we got an awful lot of people going to bed early tonight. What's up with that? Really? Sleep? Come on, who needs sleep? All right, so let's see. Andrea had a question here, and this is a good one, and I don't know that I have the best answer, but I at least want to try and answer this, Andrea, and I'm actually going to leave you with a question, so you need to give me a follow-up. I know you remember my Facebook group and Patreon, so give me a follow-up here. But the question is, he just bought 3 Savage Seamless Paper Backdrop rolls. He wants to build a backdrop stand similar to the one that I have, the DIY one that I have on YouTube out of the PVC piping, right? But instead of using the thinner pipe, the 1-inch pipe that I used in that build, he wants to, or he's thinking, use the 1.5-inch pipes. That's the bigger stuff. And then build a rack that's going to hold 3 of these seamless paper stands, okay? Or excuse me, 3 of these seamless paper rolls. So his question is, in my opinion, will using that kind of material hold the 3 rolls without him having to mount and unmount every single one if he wants to change the backdrops? In other words, could you maybe like stack them and then just roll them down? Short answer there, yes, Andrea, you could. He wants to know if I have any recommendations of what he should do to find a better or cost-efficient solution instead of buying an expensive stand, and then any recommendations about how much distance between each one. So let's start at the end. How much distance do you put between the 3 if you're going to stack them? You need about 1 inch between the roll. So literally all you need to do is open up one of the rolls while it's still fresh and full, measure the diameter across. So I think you're going to find it's about 4 inches on most seamless paper rolls. Don't take my word for it. Measure it, okay? And then, basically that means that half the diameter is 2 inches. Half the diameter of the second roll is 2 inches, and you want 1 inch in between, so that's 5 inches. So you want the center of each of those pipes to be a little bit more than 5 inches because you got to accommodate the 1.5 inch pipe, right? So do the math, map it out. That's where you're going. And then literally all you're going to do, if they're stacked one on the other, you just roll it down in front of the others. Super simple. That's how it works. What I would ask you, Andrea, is are you building this PVC setup to be able to go on location with 3 backgrounds? Or are you building this for in your apartment? Because I know that you do some of your shooting in your apartment. So if it's in your apartment, I would actually encourage you to not build the PVC at all, and I would encourage you to mount hooks on the walls. Even if you're in an apartment where you've got to, you can't damage the walls, you could mount the hooks, and then if you ever move out, you remove the hooks, patch it in, and you'll be good to go. If that's the case, you can buy hook sets for like $19. They mount on the wall permanently. You don't need like a fancy background stand that takes up a lot of space. My big concern for you going on location with this, I believe that the 1.5-inch pipe would work, but an 1.5-inch pipe where you've got enough of it to stand, shall we say, 7 feet tall and support 3 rolls of seamless, that is going to be a wicked big and wicked heavy piece of stuff to carry. So like in my video that I have on the PVC portable background stand with that thinner pipe and just holding one background, it all fits into a big duffel bag that I show you in the video. You're not going to find a duffel bag to carry 1.5-inch PVC pipe where you've got enough of it to hold 3 rolls of seamless. Just not going to work. So if you're curious about what I'm talking about the wall mount hooks, here, let me switch back again, back to my YouTube channel. So now listen close so I don't confuse you guys. Go back to the video on my DIY home studio. Look at the section of the video where I show you how I mount my portraits on the ceiling. The mounts that I use, or my portraits, my backgrounds, the mounts that I use to put my backgrounds on the ceiling are actually wall mounts. And I do say that in the video. So I mentioned that in the video. I just put the link for that video in the chat window, so you can check it out. So Mr. Pirate Brain, dying to know the background behind that username. Anyway, I bought backdrops from China. While the images are beautiful, how do I get the folds out of them from the shipping? Yeah, so that means you kind of bought the wrong backgrounds, right? Because if you get them on the right material, they won't crease. I have a couple, and the nice part is they don't crease. The best thing you can do is invest a little bit of money, and a good one is not cheap, meaning you're going to spend close to $100, but trust me, it's $100 well spent. If you're going to keep getting cloth backdrops, get a steamer. Get a good, powerful steamer. What you do is you hang the backdrop and then steam it. Boom, problem solved. If you cheap out on the steamer, the process of steaming the wrinkles out of the background is painful. So you need a good steamer. As long as you get a good, powerful steamer, you'll get the backdrops out really, really quick. So let's see. Oh, Adam, good, you're here. So you do describe how the session went and all the beauty stuff. You just don't post often. It's just difficult for you to get more clients. Yeah, so, I mean, the tough love part, Adam, if you're doing all the right things that I described in terms of your posting and that, and you're having a hard time getting more clients, then you need to look at a couple of things. So, the first one is we've got to do some honest self-evaluation about the quality of work. Are we creating work that is relevant? And when I say relevant, meaning that people are interested in, is it good work? Is it work that people see value in, that they're going to want to pay for? We always got to be honest with ourselves with that. And that's the gut check that every good photographer has got to go through routinely. Okay. The second thing then is, you've got to start looking at not so much the frequency, but I would start looking at your friends base and followers base on Facebook and YouTube in terms of who are you connecting with. And maybe you should be doing a little bit more to connect. Also, some other simple things. Make sure that when you post pictures of people that you're tagging them so that the picture shows up on their timeline, that kind of stuff. Again, it's that kind of, social reach and networking aspect of it. But I would also encourage you, Adam, I talked a little bit earlier in TogChat tonight, and they're on my channel, the social media videos that I have. Go back and watch them, especially the first one, Social Media for Photographers Part 1. I think you'll find that there's a lot of good information in there just in terms of kind of the thought process and the methodology that might help. Okay. And then, Adam, I know you're part of the Facebook group. So, if you find that you're still running into some problems, or if you have questions, don't hesitate. Hit me up with some questions in the Facebook group, and I'll try and address them. Okay. So, all right, let's try and get a couple more questions in. I have a hard deck I have to finish at 7:30. In other words, the Joe hour, 90 minutes, right? But just a reminder, like for those of you that are liking these talks, and if you're crazy enough that you just can't get enough and you want more, at 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight here in the US, I'm going to be a guest on Mirrorless Minutes, which is another YouTube live stream. And this one's all about mirrorless cameras. And we are not prejudiced. We do not discriminate. You can be a Sony no baloney user. You can be a Fuji user. You can be an Olympus user. You can be a Pentax user. Does Pentax make mirrorless? Yeah, I guess it do. I don't know. Whatever. But you can use any kind of camera. And even if you use a DSLR, take a peek at the dark side. Come listen. You might learn something. Okay. So anyway, that starts at 8 o'clock. So I need a little bit of time just to reset and, get all that stuff set up. So I'm going to finish up here sharp at 7. So Pam has a question. What is the lowest aperture? And I assume that's what you mean, Pam. It says lower, but I'm assuming you mean lowest aperture that you could shoot a group of people, a group of 3 people at. So, unfortunately, Pam, that's a question that I can't answer, because if I'm going to give you just a straight answer on your question, I could say f1.8. And I could do that. But boy, would you have to be really, really, really careful if you want all 3 people in focus, okay? So if you're looking for the easy answer, I wouldn't shoot a group of 3 people at less than 5.6 or 8. But even that is going to depend on what lens, how close am I to the group, etc. So the best answer, Pam, that I can give you, so this is kind of the tough love answer. I'm sorry. I know it's not the answer you want, but it's the answer you need. The best answer is you got to learn depth of field. If you're serious about your photography and if you want to take great pictures, you got to learn depth of field. You cannot advance your skills as a photographer without really understanding depth of field. And the cool part of it is, well, the bad part, it's physics. The cool part, it's actually really easy physics because I suck at physics and I get it. I can understand it, okay? But honestly, that's the best thing. The problem is I could tell you f22. So you have lots of depth of field and you could still have people out of focus in that shot, depending on your focal distance, depending on the lens you're using. So the best answer for you, understand depth of field. Ludmilo, you're referring to the ProPhoto Magnum. So Ludmilo, I couldn't tell you. I don't use ProPhoto. I'll get myself in trouble here, but I think it's stupid to spend that kind of money. Why spend that? What am I getting for that kind of money? Nothing. I mean, I'm sorry. Don't get me wrong. ProPhoto is great equipment. So let's be clear. ProPhoto makes excellent equipment. Probably the purest white light that you can purchase. But who cares? With auto white balance, with the ability to color correct in Photoshop so easily, what is that flash? I mean, I'm sorry, but for like a speed light, those ProPhoto A1s for $1,000, man, that damn thing better wash my car and cook my dinner for $1,000. Like, seriously? You got to be kidding me. Like, that's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. So, all that being said, I believe the Magnum has to do with size, and I think it's a more highly reflective reflector. But Ludmilo, seriously, don't take my word for it. If you're already in the ProPhoto ecosystem, if you have already invested in that kind of money, I'm quite confident that if you do a quick YouTube search on the Magnum, you're going to find some people using it, and you'll be able to find out a little bit more. And I will say that, again, in ProPhoto's defense, because yes, believe me, just like Westcott, these companies, I'll call Manfrotto, I'll call these companies out in a heartbeat if their stuff's just too damn expensive. These are companies that make great gear, but man, they are just raking us over the coals. You cannot justify the cost of their gear. You just can't. So that being said, in their defense, ProPhoto, they have some great educational material on their website. So, the one thing that ProPhoto does very, very good for their users is they're big on education, and they do put a lot of effort into that. So I'm pretty sure that if you go to their website and dig around, or their YouTube channel, because they also have a pretty vibrant YouTube channel, you'll probably find some really, really good information on the Magnum. So I'm sorry, I wish I could give you a more distinct, easy answer, and I apologize for the ProPhoto rant. I owned ProPhotos for a while, just to be clear. So I'm speaking, from experience on the ProPhoto brand. Great gear, high quality gear, even though I did have one catch on fire in a studio. True story, swear to God. But great gear, beautiful quality light. But the simple fact of the matter is I'll take a less than $300 Honey Badger and I'll do all the same stuff. So, I can't justify the cost. So, Ludmilo, you said you haven't used them yet. I only got a couple minutes, so answer me quickly. I'm curious. If you haven't used them yet, what are you using now? So if you're considering the ProPhotos, I'd love to know what you are thinking about switching from, just out of curiosity. Okay. So let's see. Did I miss other questions here? I didn't. All right, so I know I had one or two more stashed along the way here. How's that, guys? Now you got sound. It's back. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know you got sound. You should have it. Yeah, Troy, you're right. It is time to go. Hang on. It takes about 30 seconds. I'm waiting to see somebody tell me there's sound. It should be back. I figured out what I did. Give me a heads up. Come on. Somebody tell me you got sound. Do we got sound? I'm waiting. Type. All right. So anyway, I know it's back because there's somebody here listening for me. So I'm not sure where I lost you guys. So Ajax's question really quick. Okay. And then I got to sign off. So his question is about sharpening. So I apologize if you heard some of this. Okay. So, good. Thumbs up. All right. I know. I said, give me a thumbs up. You're all going like that as if I could see it, right? That's what was going on, wasn't it? Come on. Admit it. Some of you went like that. Like I could see it. Okay. So anyway, Adam, you can read lips? Yes, that was my reaction. Exactly. So, all right. Ajax had a question. Okay, sorry, I got carried away and I clicked on the wrong thing. That's where the sound went, okay? Ajax had a question about sharpening. So he said, Lightroom automatically sets it to 40. So what I was explaining before I so rudely cut myself off is that actually Lightroom doesn't automatically set it to 40. Camera Raw sets it to 40. So the develop panel in Lightroom, the develop panel in Lightroom is exactly the same piece of software that runs Camera Raw in Photoshop. So it's actually not Lightroom that does it, it's Camera Raw that does it. Now, that being said, that is the default. So in portraits, he's asking, should the sharpening be applied at the very end of all the post-processing as opposed to leaving it at 40, which is the default for Raw? And he's, basically like after you do frequency separation, after you do liquify, after you do all that. And then he goes on to say, are there areas that you personally like to sharpen more than others, such as opening of the eyelids, eyelashes, etc.? Okay, so my methodology, as well as some best practices. So let's talk about that 40 number, first of all. As a default, I always set my sharpening to 50, 55, maybe 60. I do that for every image. That is independent of the second part of your question. The second part of your question, should you be doing sharpening at the very end? Yes. And I will sharpen differently for an image going on the web than I will for an image that's going to be printed, than I will for an image that's going to be published. Okay? Go and visit Aaron Nace at Flern, Unmesh Dinda at Pix Imperfect, Colin Smith at Photoshop Cafe. Check out any one of those three guys. They've got some great videos on sharpening for each of those different things, so I'm not going to go give you a whole rundown on it. They cover it really, really well. Okay? George had a follow-up question that was, with regards to sharpening, please discuss the need to use or disable sharpening on export in Lightroom, considering that you've already done sharpening in post. And Lightroom has that sharpen for screen versus print versus social media. So I don't use Lightroom, guys. But that's the equivalent of what we're talking about doing manually. So if you're going to sharpen for print or sharpen for web manually, then turn off that setting in your Lightroom export. And honestly, I would do that anyway. I would want to essentially custom flavor the amount of sharpening that I'm doing for whatever purpose it is, whether it's social media, whether it's, for a print that's going to hang on the wall, whether it's for publication. I would rather do that than let the software mandatorily. To me, using that setting in Lightroom, the on export setting, do the sharpening, that's kind of like using a filter in Instagram. It's like a preset. Click, done. 80% of the time, it might work great. 20% of the time, it's going to burn you. It's going to be too much, too little, whatever. So I'm not a big fan of working with that kind of a setup. I prefer to kind of do it, as needed, and approach it that way. Okay. All right, gang. So listen, tonight was an interesting night. I'm not going to lie. No sound. Never did I think I would be talking about Dirty Dancing in the middle of TogChat. Anyway, I appreciate it, gang. Seriously, had a lot of fun tonight. Thank you guys for stopping out. Seriously, sleep, highly overrated, gang. It really is. So I hope that I'm going to see a lot of you in 30 minutes for Mirrorless Minutes, okay? Along with Jamie and Mike, two really cool guys. But beyond that, you guys know the drill, all right? I appreciate it. We've been here 90 minutes. That means every one of you owes me a minimum of 180 minutes with your camera in your hands, taking pictures, not watching a YouTube video, before you come back for the next TogChat. And in addition to that, remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.